Morning, Trainiacs. Are you sitting down? Because it's new bike day. So you might be saying to yourself, Taren, don't you already have a beautiful, delicious, juicy Ventum? Yes, I do. Then what's in the box? Frankly, I don't know. Let's open it up and find out. Roll the intro! Alright, this is a new Ventum bike. Allow me to explain what we're doing here. Okay, so how this came about was, wait. Y'all can go into the comments right now and start screaming, Shell! Shell! Corporate Ventum Shell! That's right. So how this came about was, you see this bike right there? We built that up earlier this year. Big project. Ventum came on board, they donated the frame. Shimano came on board, they donated the group set. Bike Makeover did the decaling. Alto did the wheels. Cobb Saddles did the saddle. And it's all sort of like the bike is meant to be a showpiece so that all of those companies get advertising on all of their stuff. Like, I mean, of course, what they want. But the dang thing was that it was always on the trainer here, or it was always in parts because I was going back and forth from the trainer to going outside and I was changing wheels and it wasn't able to actually be there. And in addition to that, like that bike, it is not cheap. They don't want to have to replace that bike. I don't want to have to replace that bike. I like that bike a lot. And here I am just sweating my little Duprees off on the trainer in here because it gets hot in here when you're putting out like 1100 watts. I know, right? So what I said to Ventum was like, all right, Ventum, if you guys have any bikes that are basically a throwaway bike and it's in a 51, I would do that. They looked in their stall and they said, well, actually, at the end of this year, we're going to be cycling out all of our demo bikes, and otherwise we would just kind of get rid of them. We can't sell them because these bikes are bikes that they take to every single race. They're nicked up, they're dented, they're in rough shape. They can't resell them. In a lot of cases, when people have troubles with their bike, whether they ride Ventum or not, Ventum will set them up on a bike. So these have had the piss ridden out of them and they can't really do anything with them. I just want a bike to sweat my Duprees off. So what I believe we've got in here is, in addition to another shirt, is a very roughly used Ventum. Okay. So let me focus. Let me explain. This bike is literally just gonna sit on the trainer so that I don't have to constantly be taking apart that bike to get it in the background and get it seen by everyone that put that bike together. This here is the cheapest of the cheap Ventums. This is their entry-level Ventum Z, which has an entirely different front end, totally mechanical, but it is still an excellent bang for your buck. This is your entry level. You want to compare this to like a Cervelo P2, except it has a lot of the same benefits of the Ventum One while being at that much cheaper price point. So let me put this together, put it on the trainer, and I'll explain the differences and why. Here's the thing. Just between the two of us, don't tell anyone I said this, but if you're on Team Trainiac, you can get 20% off. Maybe if you ask Rachel really nicely, she'll give you one of these shirts. You can look good like me. set up. So this is the whole purpose of this bike. Now, you don't have to go and get yourself a Ventum to set up a trainer bike. A lot of people that are starting to move into doing more and more of their training indoors on Zwift, Trainer Road, full gas, things like that, are starting to get like a cheaper bike, often just an aluminum frame bike off of Craigslist or Kijiji if you're in Canada, because the sweat that comes into your bike, even if you put towels on, even if you put that sling over top that catches the sweat, it ends up corroding everything inside. Like this bike here, I had a tough time threading in some of the bolts because people have just been sweating in it. That's what happens. Sweat ruins bikes. I've heard stories of people going into Alter Ego, my bike shop, and having to literally hammer the fork out of the frame, and in the end they had to throw away the bike because even though it looked clean outside and they'd done all the maintenance, you end up basically corroding and caking in all of the parts together. Let's take this thing for a ride and I'll tell you the differences between this and this. It's not as much as you might think, and if you want to save some cheddar, I'll explain what you're gonna give up. Nothing very fancy there. We're talking 45 minutes, just keeping my heart rate under 130, more like around 117. It's recovery week, and it is a rest ride on recovery week. Double the laziness. I'm into it. All right, Ventum Z versus Ventum One after I eat. BRB, LOL, ha ha ha, JK. Ventum One starts at $6,875. Big chunk of change. Ventum Z, $3,500, much more like a Cervelo P2. It is more the entry-level true triathlon bike, the one that kind of your meat and potatoes bike that is going to get you everything you want to race a triathlon without spending a ton of money. Now, a lot of people are like, oh, you know, I like the Ventum, but I don't want to spend that money, but am I going to be giving up a lot of the good Ventum One things by going with the Ventum Z? I would actually say no. The main differences between the Ventum One and the Ventum Z are solely in the front end. The Ventum One has the integrated braking in behind the fairing, the deeper front fork, more of the integrated and adjustable front end with the cockpit, whereas the Ventum Z has a mechanical brake. The front fork is not quite so deep, so not quite so aerodynamic. And then all of the parts for the cockpit are a 3T standard system, not this integrated aerodynamic system over here. And then the carbon layup is a little bit different. The carbon on the Ventum One is just slightly more stiff than the carbon on the Ventum Z, just a little bit heavier of a frame on the Ventum Z than the Ventum One. Functionally though, how is this actually going to perform? Are you getting that much less of a bike with the Ventum Z? I would actually say not, and for the average person that is just starting out getting their first tri bike, I would actually urge them to go with the Ventum Z. When we start doing the meetups and people are like, yeah, I really like that bike, but I don't know, it's too much bike for me. I urge them to go with the Ventum Z because better price point, easier to work on. This front end in the front, if you don't have, good mechanic skills, it's a bit of a nightmare to work on. There's a lot of cable routing and a lot of integration that is very, very fine tolerances, whereas the Ventum Z, I put this thing together today in like an hour and a half with a Torx wrench and one Allen key. If you're buying a Ventum, the main thing that you're looking for is the performance in the front end. So with the lack of a down tube, the reason that the Ventum has been shown to be 17 minutes faster on average over the course of a full Ironman, that includes the bike and the run, is because when you're in the cockpit, that back edge of the front wheel isn't hitting the front edge of the down tube, causing that little bit of chatter throughout the bike. Back edge of the front wheel hitting the frame ends up slapping back and forth and creating a bunch of vibration in your upper shoulders that is going to just take all the micro vibrations and the little micro stabilizations that makes you a fair bit more tired. Also, when you get crosswinds and all of a sudden you've got to pull a bike, you don't necessarily have to do that with the Ventum. And regardless of whether you're going with the $7,000 Ventum One or the $3,500 Ventum Z, you still have that same performance because there is no down tube. You also get the integrated bottle, 1.6 liters. It's literally the same one that they spec for this. So over the course of a Olympic, a sprint, if you are going fairly fast on a half Ironman, you've got all of your hydration actually included, and it makes the bike more aerodynamic to have the hydration on your bike as opposed to less, like a lot of other bikes. So are you giving up a little bit of the flash of that integrated, maximally aerodynamic front end? Yeah, but you're also getting a bike that is much easier to work on, much more practical. And if you are just getting into triathlon, buying your first triathlon bike, unless you are like big money hustling, you don't need to go and spend $7,000 to $15,000 on a bike. You can get into it for $3,500 and get all of those same benefits of being much fresher coming off the bike, being much more stable in all kinds of crosswinds, because that's frankly what we ride in. We ride in crosswinds. We don't ride in this perfectly aerodynamic wind tunnel. Do I really care what happens in the wind tunnel if the actual data that's showing up on the race course from Ironman itself, validated over tens of thousands of athletes over dozens and dozens of races, is showing that it's faster? No, I don't. It's a good bike. Either way you go. Thanks, Ventum. I am going to sweat the bejesus out of this thing. Right, Pete? Pete is excited as always. All right, Trainiacs. Thank you, Ventum. Later.